Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Jack Canfield, and with me today is Dora Carpenter. And she's the author of The Grief Talk Revolution. It's time to talk about the elephant in the room. And Dora is also the founder of the Institute of Professional Grief Coaching, where she trains grief coaches. Welcome to the show, Dora.
Thank you, Jack. It's an honor to be here.
Well, I'm thrilled that you're here. I think it's such an important topic. Now, you have an interesting story about how you got started doing grief work. So let's start with telling everybody about that.
Okay, certainly. It's a turning lemons into lemonade story. I worked in the death care industry in the cemetery and funeral home, of course, helping families make final arrangements for loved ones. And what we had to do was, of course, meet with them at the time of the service to make arrangements, meet them at their graveside service. And then if they allowed us, we would meet them in their homes a few weeks after, just to make sure we did everything that we were supposed to do. When we returned the next day, I was always chastised for being in the homes too long. Dora, why were you there? An hour. Dora, how long were you really there? An hour and a half. Why, Dora? Well, the families wanted to share stories. They wanted to show me pictures. They wanted to talk about their loved ones. And that's when I realized that families needed more help after the services were over, after they were sitting at the table with me making final arrangements. When the doorbell stopped ringing, the house was quiet, the text messages ceased, and everybody had returned to their sense of normalcy in daily lives. That's when the grief actually set in. So I researched how we could help those families during the aftercare period, and I found grief coaching. So I sent a proposal and said, this is what we can do for our families. And the proposal was denied. I was told, Dora, your job is not to offer grief support. It's to sell cemetery property. That did not sit well with me, but I took their no, Jack, and I made it my yes. And so I went ahead, got trained as a grief coach, and I started offering free grief support at the local libraries here in my community of Washington, D.C. That's the beginning.
Wow. So why do you think that talking about grief, or what you're calling the elephant in the room, is such a big problem?
It's a problem because we live in a grief avoidance society. So our culture looks at grief as dark. It's dark, it's non-conversational, and it's not a comfortable topic to talk about. The reality is death at some point will visit every household, every community, every organization. It places itself on your calendar. You can't postpone it, delete it, hit the delete button in the computer and say, come back later. So it's an inevitable event that's going to happen. But because we don't talk about it, it's not a sympathy problem. We do care and we are concerned, but it's an education problem. And that's why, because it's an education problem, we do and say, I like to say all the wrong things, but the things that are not comfortable for that individual who's grieving. I like to say it's alarming to me, Jack, that medical students don't have grief education as a part of their required curriculum. Wow. And that should upset everyone, because these are the individuals that come to you and say, I'm sorry, we did everything that we could do. So if they don't have grief education as a part of their curriculum, then we can't expect for leaders in organizations to have something on their job description that says, you're also responsible for ensuring that we have a grief-sensitive, a grief-informed, a grief-friendly workplace culture. So it's acknowledging and opening ourselves up to learn more about the subject and talk more about the subject that's the elephant in the room.
Wow. That's so true. Now, one of the things you say in your book is that we often say things that are not helpful to someone who's grieving the loss of a loved one. Tell us more about that.
Certainly. And again, it's not our fault. No one has told us. So we say things, although meaning well, such as, I understand how you feel. So, Jack, if you lost your mom and I've lost my mom, and I say to you, Jack, I understand how you feel. Well, the reality is I can't possibly understand exactly how you feel. I don't know the intimate relationship that you shared with your mom or the relationship that you did not have with your mom at the time of. So we say that, but it's not the best thing to say to an individual who's grieving, and they're grieving, so they can't respond to you and say, you don't have a clue how I feel. We say things such as, at least you're young, you can have other children. At least you're young, you can marry again. Well, at least you were married for 45 years. At least he didn't suffer. And that's not the best thing to say to anyone also, because empathy never begins with at least. And one other thing, we try, although meaning well, to fix or cure that grief for that individual. So we share what may have worked for us, and we'll say, well, stop going to the cemetery every day. Get rid of everything's in the house. Stop, you're being selfish. Be strong, don't cry. And what that does is we're asking that person to deny those necessary feelings, emotions, and responses to loss. And we're also judging, thinking that what works for us will work for them. And grief is not linear. We're all unique individuals. We all have our own unique fingerprint, DNA, and our grief journeys will be unique. So there's no right way, there's no wrong way. So again, it's education, acknowledging, and opening ourselves up to hear that, maybe that's not the best thing to say to someone who's grieving. So instead of me saying, Jack, I understand how you feel, I might say, Jack, I have no idea of how you feel. This must be very difficult for you, but I'm here to support you in whatever way I can. It softens it, and it also allows for you to respond and share if you like, because we like to say, oh, tell me what happened. That's really bad. Well, maybe that person is not ready to share or even wants to share in certain situations, such as death by suicide. They may not be ready to share. So we have to be very, very careful, cautious, and mindful of how we respond.
So one more time, I want people to really hear it. What they should say is,
I can't imagine how you feel. Certain things that are safe, of course, when we say my condolences on your loss, it's safe, it's generic. Please only say it if you genuinely mean that, and then offer to support in whatever way is applicable and meaning to that person. Another thing we say, call me if you need anything. Well, that person has 101 decisions that they have to make within that 24 to 72 hour period. So if you know that person, instead, maybe suggest something that you know. I'll be more than happy to do the grocery shopping for you. I'll take the kids to karate practice. I know your dad does dialysis. I'll be more than happy to do whatever I can for them.
That's great. Well, thank you for that. Now, this is really an important topic that most people never receive any education about. It's not taught in the schools. It's not taught in the medical schools, which is shocking. It's probably not even taught clearly in most of the pastoral schools as well, which they should be taught. And yet every one of us, as you said, is going to have to deal with it probably multiple times in our life. And one of the things I love that you said is that, and you write about it in your book, is that the corporations, places of work, people, you lost your father, take a day, come back, or you can take the day of the funeral off, and then you expect them to be right back at work. We'll give people months for paternity leave or maternity leave, which is an important transition, but nobody really does the same thing with with the death of a family member. It's insane when you really think about it. So where can people learn more about your book, your online courses, your grief coach certification program? Where do they go, Dora?
Certainly. Thanks for asking. They can go to the website fromgrieftogratitude.com. Fromgrieftogratitude.com.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. You are doing really important work and you do it so well. So again, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And thanks to all of you for watching this and joining us today. And make sure to tune in again next week when I'm going to have another guest whose insights, whose experiences, and whose wisdom can help you live a happier and more fulfilling life. Until then, I encourage you to get a copy of Dora's book, Grief Talk Revolution, and educate yourself on this very important topic for yourself and for the people you love. See you soon.